Well, okay, I'm on it.
Someone
On
got
it as well. Yeah, we got it.
Can you hear us?
Yes, it's back on with sound.
You see the Vaughn thing, you know that, right? Okay, go back to full screen. They say we hear you.
All right, we're back. So, what were you saying, Gary? About do you think there's a methodological problem with that?
I forgot what I was saying
You're
there.
Vaughn.
I've lost my
Wait,
train
mute
of
the Vaughn.
thought.
My phone is muted.
Oh, okay, good.
Why are you getting echo?
No, never mind. Go ahead.
Yeah. Sorry, I was just saying that. Yeah, there's a method about one of those experiments is for, but setting that aside, the latter one, the experiment that demonstrates the 600 millisecond sort of like gap is flawed. But setting that aside, yeah, we know that there's the physical world is prior to our choices. You know. But it's not the case that necessarily means that what we call free will, in order to make our morality works, is incompatible with that fact. You know, the free will, as we use it to reference what you were saying, is not incompatible with our understanding that the physical world is prior to our mental choices. That's compatibilism.
Yeah, and maybe this might go off in a different direction, but again, with like Johann and his attempt to try to refute materialism, as if that somehow grants you free will. I mean, my thinking about the whole materialism, or as Craig says, immaterialism dichotomy. As if things can, whatever way in which things would exist immaterially. I guess the philosophical term for this is substance, right? So like a substance dualist. You believe there's material things and then mental things, physical and mental. And I really almost see this as a meaningless or just pointless distinction, a false distinction, in other words, because either way, there is a substance that we're saying is the thing which exists. There's something there.
Ultimately, yes.
And insofar as we're granting that there's some substance, in that sense, God is, even though you want to say, okay, he's immaterial, he's non-physical, but there is some substance that makes up God. God is not literally nothing, right? I mean, as Craig loves to point out, nothingness is nothing. It's not just simply immateriality.
Yeah.
I mean, otherwise he says God is literally nothing. And so just
God
to
is a
conclude,
thing. Yeah.
well, just to conclude, then there's this whole distinction between material things and then divine substance or something.
Immaterialness.
Well, either way, there's a substance there. I mean, and I think that just colloquially, it's meaningful to just call even that divine substance material.
Something different. So God is real?
Well, so either way, though, you're dealing with a substance, which presumably is causal. Orders, follows some logical causal order. Unless it's just
upon another substance, aren't you?
But I'm saying it doesn't matter whether you want to say it's physical or made of some other kind of divine celestial substance. Either way, you're dealing with a substance that supposedly is logical in that, it's not completely random and chaotic, so it's causal. And so what's the difference between that substance and a physical substance? How do you get free will all of a sudden by denying one kind of substance but granting another? I mean, I just don't get it.
Cheeky, you have anything to add?
Yeah, it's magic. It's, some obscure phenomena, and then therefore free will.
Well, you can sort of, what you can do, I suppose, you'd go, well, the substance in question is a mental substance. It's a mind stuff, the basic stuff of the universe, the basic, durable, independent stuff is mind stuff. And as mind stuff, it has mental properties, and it is within the bounds of those mental properties and mental relations and categories and actions that it can be given as a gift. And I would imagine an argument amongst those, something along those lines would be presented. playing devil's advocate, of course. Hello?
Yeah, I was getting Glenn.
Now, Cheeky, what argument would you make for determinism? I'm curious.
Yeah.
So we both mostly speaking about free will since I've gotten on.
Well, I would just want to add that I don't necessarily care if determinism is true or not. You know, if indeterminism is true, my determinism is more like bracket in, close bracket determinism, in that it can have randomness in it, and then it's still not clear what free will is, or how it works, or if, you know, the existence of an open future gives us the kind of moral responsibility which, you know, the conservative apologetics needs us to have, you know, to because you know the free will, the libertarianism is there for a reason. It's there because it's a vital part of the theist apologetic, and if it goes down, then nothing makes sense for them.
Yeah. God is primarily a moral agent or a moral force in their life, isn't he?
Well, and what's even stranger is you come across people who try to define, I don't know, it just seems to relate to another discussion when people talk about God's omnipotence and his ability to only do that which is within his nature. You know, like, in other words, they say God can't lie. You know, I mean, supposedly we have free will, you know, this thing that enables us to basically do, you know, again, whatever's within our nature, but, like, we can do more than God can, in a sense, you know. I mean, we can do really mundane things that supposedly God can't do. I mean, and again, you know, the idea that, you know, omnipotence means you can only do that which is in your nature, as opposed to simply everything that's logically possible, really makes omnipotence meaningless. I mean, if God can't lie, he doesn't have free will either.
Yeah. I think his response to that would probably be that God has a supreme nature and is a mental entity, is a mental being, being with a supreme nature. So what seems like limitations to us are merely misapprehensions from our limited material perspective, or something along those lines.
But Gary, wouldn't you say when you say something has a nature, isn't that a property it has?
Oh yes, yeah. It's a predication. It's a property which can consist in relations with categories and can be evidenced in events as well. So yes.
The thing I'm curious about is they say God's immaterial. How do you know what properties?
Yeah, but you can have immaterial properties
without actually examining it. Kind of like we know what the property of hardness is. It's hard. You know.
Yeah, they'd say that our initial analysis of mental properties, of the properties that things that mental states have, that minds have, is adequate. And because the mind is the ultimate substance, those are the essential properties of existence. So you know, things like God's compassion and all the absolutely perfect mental states that he has are the essential states, and the physical ones just follow on that. You know, follow on from that as accidental sort of like occurrences. That would be their argument, I would imagine. That's what the other things that we could discuss that are wrong with that, but they will say that it is possible for God to have a perfect mental nature, and that's a metaphysical position that they probably adopt, I would imagine.
I think they started to move away from perfection, though, and at least the term perfection, and have now substituted it with, like, maximally great.
Wait,
right?
Are you on your laptop?
No. Or yes.
Not?
Yes, I am, yeah.
Yeah, because we hear a fan.
I know, it's... Yeah.
It does sound like you've got a little train set.
I mean, so Cheeky, I mean, what do you expect for tomorrow to be?
I expect it to be...
Cheeky?
Can you hear me?
Yeah, we hear you.
Okay, I expect it to be a long sort of sermon about something which I don't understand, like idealism. You know, like I've studied the free will issue a little bit and I know my way around it. But you can always add more things which someone doesn't understand, like idealism, quantum mechanics, and eventually you just have to go, I don't know.
Yeah, I'm willing to bet it's going to be a big tirade on quantum mechanics and how, it's going to be Johann and IP spouting their version of quantum mechanics, and how it shows that realism is false, materialism is false.
Physics, I can guarantee you that it's going to be that the latest cutting-edge discoveries in digital physics prove that physicalism is false, and that the ultimate nature of reality is that of a perfectly unique and absolutely perfect mind.
Yeah, that's exactly.
That's
what I don't understand though. Like, I would say, what is your mind? It's matter, just like your brain's matter. He wouldn't. He's going to say no. Look, physics is telling us that at its most fundamental level, physical matter has intentionality, and it has processes in computation that only minds can have, like intentionality, like aboutness. Therefore, he will say that proves that substance is mind. Does that mean that the universe, if it's part of God's mind, has some kind of saying oh, natural disasters are God's way of judging you? Does that mean supernovas are God's way of saying fuck you and I don't know, black holes are God?
It could do. He probably going to avoid that because that just makes him look like an arse. So he'll probably avoid saying that, but he could do. He'll basically just argue that for a kind of Berkeleyan idealism as God as first mental principle.
He's argued exactly that. I mean,
that's sort of vague impression I get.
Well, I want to know
that the universe is a simulation in God's mind, and that which is weird. I'll say one thing about that, which it seems like his argument almost contradicts itself, because on one hand he's trying to say that things aren't there when you don't look at them, and this is borne out by all the physics and quantum mechanical experiments. But then on the other hand, he says no, things are there when you don't look at them because God is sustaining them.
If he's a Berkeleyan, he'll say that, well, things might not be there when it's a matter of whether God looks at them. Yeah, it's a matter of their being created in God's ultimate absolute mind.
But that's the contradiction, because he tries to say that he starts with the premise that things are not there when we don't look at them, based on scientific experiments. And then he somehow gets to, well, therefore God has to be the one who sustains the universe. Looking at them, but that means things are there.
It's omniscient. It's not omniscient. It's omniscience. Solipsism, isn't it? Isn't that what's called?
It'll be omniscient. It'll appeal to that perfection of being omniscient, of knowing all. It'll appeal to that naturally.
It'll be interesting though, if you can make free will conceptually coherent. Like, just say to him, okay, you can make up whatever sort of crazy
that's not
thing you want.
No. But IP is the one who's going to define. In the beginning, I told IP that he's going to define free will.
Ooh.
Which seems like a challenge, doesn't it?
Well, in his video, he didn't sort of. I'm going to do a bit of an apologist here and sort of be like, oh, he didn't address the latest literature, but Robert Kane has done some work trying to show how randomness gets you to free will, and it's very controversial, and it's not sort of simple, and I felt like that this was all glossed over. Well, Gary, do you know what I'm on about?
I haven't heard of that particular work, no, but it'd be intriguing to find out, because in what way is randomness adequate to the use of free will that we've been talking about? It wasn't me, Your Honour. It was just the random collision of the stars and the atoms. Not my fault. It just seems to just destroy. Randomness seems to destroy free will at its root.
Yeah, but Kane sort of does an intrepid attempt to sort of bring randomness and sort of the agent together. But the agent seems to, in his account, to disappear at the crucial point. And it's just at the end of the day, it's still random. So I'll be interested to hear how sort of idealism solves that.
So what's that word called? Can you give me the name of that researcher again, so I can look that up?
Robert Kane.
Yeah, that sounds familiar. Kane, yeah, that does sound familiar. I'll certainly check that out.
but I'm skeptical at the outset because randomness isn't what we want.
Well, I feel like I don't know, and I want to say maybe we should either switch topics or because I don't want to rehash everything too much we're going to talk about tomorrow, and or try to. I don't want to be accused of straw manning them either.
Well,
since they're not here.
If I say something stupid today, they've got all of tomorrow to laugh at me about it.
True, but I'm just saying. I mean, it's okay. We can talk about it, whatever. But maybe we should try to stay away from saying what they might say or what they will say. I mean, just,
okay.
You can speculate. Yeah, no.
I say go with it. I say let it. If we're gonna talk about free will, which is tomorrow's gonna be, let's have viewers have an idea of what we're gonna do. And I'm guessing pretty much from their videos, we have an idea what they're gonna do, right?
Why don't we talk about idealism? Because I don't know where to go from that. That makes no sense to me.
Well, we can talk about it, is all I'm saying. Just don't phrase it in terms of, well, they would say this, or this is their response. Just discuss, okay, well, one idea is that maybe that could be solved by blah, 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 That's all I'm saying.
Okay.
So, yeah, what did Cheeky say? Idealism?
Idealism. The mind is in principle prior to necessary for and independent of the physical world or of physical things. That's supernatural idealism.
That makes no sense.
Well, okay. I think we're pretty much all physicalists, right? We think that the physical matter is what the universe is in its substantive form. That when you get down to the simple, durable, independent stuff of which everything is made, you've got physical matter, and out of that emerges mind through the processes of natural selection, of evolution, and the complexity, growing complexity of matter. That's our position. Okay, turn it on its head. But the substantive stuff, the substance, is mind, and matter is the stuff that grows out of mind. It's basically what people is still on its head.
Well, hold on, though. But you're not really... It doesn't seem like you're really flipping it on its head, because in the physicalist view, everything is physical. So to turn that on its head is just to deny that anything is physical.
Well,
I mean,
the physicalist view isn't strictly that everything is physical. It's that the substance of everything that exists. If you take existence, the entirety of existence, its substance is physical, and then mental things exist, but they exist through a process of emergence from the physical.
Exactly. So
turn that on its head, and you've basically more or less got idealism.
Well, Well, this is my point. I think there's really, again, a false distinction here between physicalism and idealism or materialism, in which, I mean, we all share the same experience. I mean, if you want to introduce the word qualia here, I guess, but I think the direct experience, you could say it's mental or physical, and you really mean the same thing. In which case, I don't really see any distinction between the two. I mean, really, everything is... It's just two different words of saying the same thing in that case, isn't it? I mean, I can describe everything I experience in terms of physicality. It's all physical, even down to, my emotions, etc.
Do you experience it in terms of first-person phenomenology? Do you experience it in exactly the same way as you experience as a physical event? I mean, when you look at the colour, I don't know. When you hear the note on a keyboard, middle A, is your phenomenal perception of that 440 hertz?
Oh, well, I'll say it this way.
Or is it a sound of a particular pitch?
It's a sense. It's an audible sense. And I guess I would say it this way: that yes, there's differences among senses. There's differences among types of experience, but it's all experience, and I can characterize that by saying physical or mental, and in which case they're both referring to the same thing, it seems to me.
Okay, so when you see the colour green, you're not phenomenally aware of something about roughly 500 odd nanometers wavelength, are you? Even though that's its primary physical quality of electromagnetic radiation of about 500 oddish, 530, isn't it, nanometers? So there's some.
Well, I could say
there seems to be some phenomenal difference.
I mean, couldn't I? I mean, maybe I couldn't, but it seems like couldn't I also say the primary physical quality of it is my actual experience of it, rather than a quantified number?
Well,
I mean, aren't they both just different degrees of the same thing?
Yeah, well, as physicalists, you'd argue that the phenomenal, the manifest image, if you like, of the phenomena, you know, the qualia, to use the term, you'd say that what those depend upon and are supervenient upon some or other physical realizer. But phenomenologists or people who psychology have something of a point in that we perceive mental things to have different properties to physical things, or properties that are not immediately, at least, physical-like. You know. Now,
I guess the closest analogy would be like the soul. Like, what is the soul? It's like the thing. We don't think of this like there's no such thing as the soul, right? But it's people assume it's different material than material, right?
Well, people do assume that. Some people do, yes.
Yeah.
You know, and one of the reasons why people often give that, including, for example, famously Descartes, was that physical things have extension in space, whereas mental things don't. You know, and they point to all kinds of properties that mental things have, or mental states have, that physical ones don't. Now, they make a big deal of this. They claim that it points to some kind of substance dualism, or some kind of like, at least some kind of irreducible property dualism. So, you know, and it's difficult. You know, the physical and the mental do seem to be different. I mean, mental states are about things. We have beliefs about tomorrow's weather, or we have desires for certain things. You know, our mental states are about things, but it's very difficult to see it seems very difficult to have to attribute the same aboutness to physical states. You know, this table isn't about anything. A pencil isn't about anything. You know, these are the properties that are often cited as marking out the mental from the physical.
Wait. Does that mean a computer has a mental state?
Oh, some people will argue that the intentionality that computers, if you can simulate or model intentionality in a computer, you simulate a mental state. Yes, that would be that's some of the presuppositions of artificial intelligence. So yeah, you could say that you might be able to program a computer to have a mental state. Yes.
I mean, but we know. I mean, I've taken electrical engineering. We know. Well, if we didn't, we couldn't do it. We know that you can make letters and numbers from just ones and zeros. You can make. That's how computers basically are running, from ones and zeros, and then you go from there to the hexadecimal, and then you go from there. It's a lot more complex than that, but that's the basis of computers. So it's just a bunch of ones and zeros, though, on-off states in a chip. It's nothing really more than that. Is the ones and zeros mental? No, they're physical. They're actually physical processes within the computer.
Sure. And you can argue, as many people do, of course, in artificial intelligence, that you can construct mental states using sort of those substrates, those physical and then those numerical digital substrates. But what some people would object is, by citing these properties, they'd say, but a computer will never have the experience of what it is like to see the colour red, or what it is like to hear a particular note or smell a particular blossom. You know, they'll say these are qualities that are elusive. And
what does that mean? What does that mean? What does that mean to see the color red? I mean, can you get a camera?
A camera. Well, their argument when they are. Again, I'm a bit devil's advocating here a little bit. Their argument will be yes, but the phenomenological first-person quality of what it is to look at something red, the redness of red, to our sort of first-person sort of like a manifest image as we see it as conscious beings, that's something very different to sort of like certain wavelengths agitating silicon photoreceptors at a certain sort of electrical frequency. They'll say that's a different thing. And people who want to make the argument from idealism will touch upon this. The argument for idealism will touch upon these differences and portray them as being signs that the mental is fundamentally different from the physical.
But it still strikes me that something that is not different is causality. I mean, even if you want to describe things in terms of mental qualia, in terms of free will, again, I don't see how that somehow gives you a choice. I mean, even if you say mental states, there is there not some kind of substance to the mental states? Is not qualia...
There is a substance, and the debate is as to what the substance is. When we fully assess and analyse mental states, will we find that mental states are merely accidental sort of arrangements of matter, or will we find that matter is an accidental arrangement of mind stuff, of a substantial mind? And that's what the ontological debate is between idealists and physicalists.
Yeah, but either way, in terms of causality, I don't think it makes any difference, does it?
No, it doesn't. No, you're right. No, it doesn't.
I mean, wait. I don't understand this, though. When has idealism ever been the staple of knowledge?
It was in this country, in Britain, during the late 19th century, until the point where analytic philosophy came to the fore. The British idealists were quite big. Hegel, the German or Prussian philosopher, was an idealist. So was Kant. And there's Berkeley.
No, but I'm saying, what does idealism accomplish? Like, what can you do? Like, can you build models on idealism?
You could be a functionalist. The current leading sort of, to a degree, leading field idea in philosophy of mind is functionalism. You can be a functionalist and an idealist. That's what their mental states are characterised in terms of their role in their functional role. You could be an idealist and be a functionalist. It's not as implausible as substance dualism, for example. Substance dualism fails because of interactionism. Substances can't interact because they're both perfectly basic and durable and independent. It's a thing. It's an idea that's worthy of consideration, but it does have its flaws.
Well, think of it this way. I think Prague is trying to act, I called you Prague. Wow.
Wow,
I know.
You're in flashbacks.
Well, no, because that was my next.
You're dumb.
No. That's because that's what I was getting to. I was trying to say Strife was talking. It seems like Strife was talking about the pragmatic effects of, say, believing in idealism, and think of it this way: idealism is just a way of interpreting the world, and so your question can be restated as well: is the world pragmatic? I mean, of course. So. I mean, they're just viewing the world through a different lens, and
but
the world is still pragmatic.
Okay.
I mean, maybe you could ask whether or not. I guess maybe you're trying to ask whether or not is it more pragmatic over.
Like I'm asking this. Like, science works by physicalism, right?
Mm-hmm.
Well, it could. I mean, if you're an idealist, you could still believe in science.
Yeah, you can have an idealist science, although there would be problems. But carry on, yes.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying though. Like, was there ever such a time that wait, isn't the closest thing to that like Aristotle, where he said pretty much you can think?
Well, I think if you look at, you can correct me if I'm wrong here, Gary, but I think it was Husserl was like the big phenomenologist.
Yeah, phenomenology is the methodology. It's a
like
controversial thing to say, but it's like the methodology of the idealist. I mean, that's a controversial thing, and I can sense idealists bristling in the world at me saying it. But there is something to, because they have methods for dealing with these things. But there is something that you could suggest that phenomenology is the methodology of the idealist.
Yeah, I mean,
it's bracketing things and sort of like, you know, getting to grips with the first person sort of quite uninterpreted mental state. Yeah.
Well, I've even heard it phrased in terms of like being a science of what is directly experienced. You know, the science of direct experience. You know.
That's right. Yes. Yeah. So there's something like there's although they'll object and say, well, look, it's, you know, this idealist physicalist thing is based on Cartesian ideas that not phenomenologists reject. Nevertheless, there is something of the idealist in the phenomenologist, I would wager.
Oh crap! I was just gonna say we lost a follower.
Oh, could we ask why is it not a clear violation of Occam's razor?
Idealism. Yeah. Why isn't idealism? Because ultimately it's as simple as physicalism. It's, you know, it's just physicalism stood on its head. It doesn't gain any parts or lose any parts by standing on its head.
But there's a sense in which it makes more sense to be a physicalist because you can see the process by which minds emerge from matter.
Yes.
There's no sort of symmetrical process.
Yeah. You're right. What the problem with it is ultimately it begs the question, okay then, what is mind? You know, it begs that question. Just to say, all is mind and mind, and that particular methodology of just mind is the substance of it, is just inviting this kind of uncritical thinking, this sort of this credulity to the way things just seem to you.
Well, you were talking about turning things on their heads. Could you not ask the same thing about matter? You know, to ask, well, okay, well, what is matter? You know, it seems
Wait. I honestly think matter is such a pointless term in physicalism, honestly.
Yeah.
Because we have antimatter, we have dark matter. I mean, it's such a stupid word. We should call it positive matter or something.
Yeah, you could, and the difference would then start you cash out the difference in terms of how good the theories that you can form, the predictive and explanatory theories that you can form in under the different kinds of substances are. I think you can explain a great deal more in physicalism or in terms than you can in idealist terms, because it means the fundamental dialogue you're having about the universe is either in terms of a natural science, which has a proven track record of a very deep, penetrative and useful analysis of reality, or a kind of idealized sort of abstract psychology, which makes everything a bit of a mystery, given that you don't even know what you mean by mind.
Gary?
Yeah?
I'd like to know what you mean by the manifest image. Is that sort of the way that things appear?
Food sellers, yeah. That's just the way things are immediately manifest to our perception. The way things seem pre-reflectively before we reflect on them or sort of like think about them too much.
But isn't this even open to dispute what that includes?
Absolutely. I mean, the guy who coined the term, or at least brought it to public awareness, who was Wilfrid Sellers, basically called the argument in which he presented it the myth of the given. The idea that things are given to us without any conceptual background interpretation is just a fallacy. It's just a source of error. You know.
Wait, I dare you. Sorry.
I've always been a determinist of sorts. Like, even before I was into philosophy, I always just, from quickly thinking about it, like, I don't see how, you know, this free will thing could make any sense. It just seems that, you know, and this was true of Bertrand Russell as well. He just quickly thinking about it, you know, he was a determinist, although he didn't have the word for it.
Yeah.
Wait, you have something to say? Because I dare you to do it. I dare you to shut you down.
No, I just would say that
Solipsism is parasitic on realism.
Yeah.
What? I
Yeah,
guess depending on what you mean by solipsism.
We think solipsism solves everything.
It
I
borrows from realism.
Well,
It's-
Cheeky, you said
yeah.
Cheeky invoked Occam's razor a minute ago, and it seems to me solipsism is the ultimate application of Occam's razor. It shaves away all these unnecessary ideas, all these unnecessary factors, all these
It depends how
discussions
you
about what
formulate-
something
I'm just
is.
always reminded of of Russell's joke, because somebody just mentioned Russell, that a woman wrote to him claiming to be.
I wonder why
a
there aren't more of
solipsist,
us.
and I wonder why, and she was surprised that there weren't more of them.
No, I mean, wait,
I would
wait,
say though
wait,
that's a misunderstanding of at least.
No, I would ask
mean.
the woman. Are you do? I mean, I would ask the woman. Why would you write to someone if you're a solipsist? Because can't you? Because
Why
you
not?
just a figment of. Yeah.
No. See, that is the fundamental misunderstanding of solipsism. It's not that you're a figment of my imagination, because that's already presupposing the antithesis to solipsism, namely that there's some other world out there in which, you don't
There
exist.
isn't any
You
other
exist.
world. Wait, there isn't any other world. That's the problem. That's what it means.
No,
right?
No,
Isn't
no.
it solipsism?
No,
Okay.
I the way I say it is that it's if you will, and I don't like putting it this way, but I think maybe it helps, it's a form of kind of agnosticism about the external world. It doesn't, in other words, it would be equally meaningless for the solipsist to say there is nothing else, for him to say that there is, because all we can meaningfully talk about is what is experienced, this right here. Anything beyond this is meaningless, irrelevant speculation. So when people say, oh, well, I mean, this is why I posed the DPR earlier. Wouldn't you say that this whole idea of an external world, whether there is or is not one, is a completely, either way, is unfalsifiable. And so therefore irrelevant.
I disagree.
It's irrelevant. And as long as it's
You're
irrelevant, we can shave it off with Occam's razor. We don't need the assumption.
But you're very much, even then you run the risk of taking things as they appear to be the way they really are.
By definition.
Perhaps what you owe to a physicalist conception is an argument as to why other minds cannot exist, because they share the appropriate physical realizers. Yeah, I mean, if you say a mental state, for example, is a functional state which is realized by some or other physical realizer, then why can't other minds exist by virtue of them also being realized by a suitable physical realizer?
Oh, well, it seems like you're begging the question there. I mean, sure, they could, but again, it's for the solipsist, it's irrelevant. You could never demonstrate. You could never know any of that. All you can possibly know is this right here. And so, to speculate about whether or not there are other people.
Is this what it is? Is this
if by
manifest to you what it is?
If by it you mean this, then yes, tautologically, of course,
So
this is this.
That's where a physicist could diverge from the solipsist and say, well, no, we take mental states in a different way, in a non-phenomenological way. We don't take them like that. We take them to be functional states realized by physical realizers. And if we find an appropriate arrangement of physical matter elsewhere, there we have a suitable evidence for other minds. That'd be a physicalist retort to the solipsist.
Yeah, but you're begging the question a million times by saying that.
Where am I begging the question? Where does that beg the question now? Where precisely does it lay down a premise that is identical with its conclusion?
Well, you said if these physical realizers exist outside of of experience, well, then, yeah, you're already.
When we find them, when we say,
it's impossible to find them.
These functional. Well, it isn't, because we're talking with physical states, aren't we? We're talking functional states first, primary functional types and categories, and then we're finding arrangements of matter that realize them. They can be token arrangements, of course. They don't have to be type arrangements. They can be token arrangements of matter that fulfill these functional criteria. When we find something like that, we found a suitable candidate for a mental state. Thus, mental states can be empirically verified externally
but showing
first perception.
showing things that are physical, calling something physical, isn't antithetical to solipsism. I mean, there's a perfectly legitimate way within solipsism. You can say things are physical, and you can talk about,
You can do. Yes, you can do.
Yeah,
that doesn't.
Challenge
You're just reformulating physicalism there.
You can just.
I am. And you guys and the opposite would be someone formulating physical as in external to the mind. In which case you can by definition you cannot ever experience that.
But physicalism is a much better explanation than solipsism because you're just agnostic.
How is it a better explanation if it's unfalsifiable?
Because if the physical stuff is the substance, if the physical stuff is the stuff from which mind emerges and upon which mind supervenes, then by studying things at their substantial level, just like we do in biology, we understand more about biology by understanding biochemistry because it digs into the issue deeper.
But what do we study? We study the phenomenon. We study what it is experienced.
We take it into account. Yeah, we certainly take it into account. It's not dismissed, but its revelations, its nature might not be the final word on the matter.
Yeah.
We might be able to study to learn more about it by studying its physical substance.
Here's the fundamental truth of solipsism that I don't think you can get around. It's that we can never experience anything outside of our own experiences.
Yeah, but we can theorize. We can theorize about our experiences.
Oh, sure.
Our theories don't exist. Our observations don't exist independently of theories. They are wrapped up and presented to us and examined and accepted within the context of underlying theories. And if the theories that we have that are physicalist theories, are theories where we physicalize, the ones that are products of our best empirical theories, that's scientific theories, would seem to suggest that we can learn more even about our first person phenomenological kind of experiences if we just sort of dig into them a little bit more as if they are supervenient upon the physical world.
But none of that is antithetical to solipsism.
Because nothing is antithetical to solipsism. It's unfalsifiable.
No. See, this is why I say the way I phrase solipsism, I think the way it's properly understood, the real concept, is that you don't assume. You don't need that assumption that things either are or aren't.
You bracket things, and you see them in their first person. In their what's the word? I forgot what the word is now. No, not context. There's a technical phenomenological term for it. I can't remember what it is.
So let me say it this way. Anybody who says the external world, or whether or not, say, we live in a matrix, because by the way, the matrix only makes sense in a realist worldview. To a solipsist, it's just as meaningless. It's just as pointless. So anybody who says that idea is meaningless, it's unfalsifiable whether or not we're living in a matrix or our experiences conform to some external reality. That's exactly what a solipsist says. It's pointless. It doesn't matter. So if it doesn't matter, then why even assume? Why
I'm not sure you're really a solipsist.
Okay. But what I'm saying is I think people take solipsism to mean I as the singular. I mean, the way people understand solipsism, I think, is from the perspective of a realist, and so they're already inherently misunderstanding the concept. I mean, it's not to say that I'm the only one that exists as some singular individual among many others, because that's already presupposing something else. It's already making all these divisions that the solipsist doesn't make.
But do you accept that as a solipsist you rely heavily on the account of your own mind that you think is manifest to you without interpretation by means of raw awareness? I mean, would you admit that you depend on that to some degree?
That I depend on what? My interpretation of my experience?
Your idea of your own existence and your own mind is one based on your perception of your raw awareness, your first person perception of your raw awareness, as if it's a direct revelation of the way things really are.
Well, in a sense it is. I mean, what you're saying is that I perceive my perceptions to be my perceptions in a sense, or I mean, the interpretation is itself a perception and experience. So, I mean, I don't think you can judge your perceptions by your perceptions. I'm not saying that. That's meaningless. But then in another sense, there is no other criteria. In other words, there is no criteria in which to say your perceptions are accurate or inaccurate. And again, it's somewhat meaningless for a solipsist anyways to hear whether or not it's correct, because the only way in which your senses would be correct, in the sense that, okay, they conform to some reality that you can never experience, that you have no access to whatsoever, then okay, yeah, they may or may not be correct in that sense, but they are